I still remember that electrifying moment as if it were a searing flash, when, in the midst of our quiet evening at home, I discovered that my wife had taken our retirement savings and run away, leaving me in stunned disbelief. In those first 100 heartbeats, every promise of a secure future crumbled, and the bitter taste of betrayal mixed with shock as I realized that the nest egg I'd painstakingly built for our later years was gone. But even as despair threatened to overwhelm me, a daring spark ignited within. I had already cashed out everything. That twist of fate, unexpected and raw, would forever alter the course of my life and redefine what it meant to choose myself. It all began on what I thought was an ordinary autumn evening. I had returned home from a long day at work, my mind preoccupied with the usual worries of bills and retirement planning. As I sat at our kitchen table reviewing our joint finances, a ritual we once shared with mutual trust, I noticed an anomaly. There, in black and white on the latest bank statement, was a staggering sum, a large withdrawal that I could not account for. At first, I thought it might be a simple mistake or a miscommunication, but as I cross-checked with previous statements and emails, the horrifying truth unfolded. My wife had taken our retirement savings. The numbers didn't lie. I felt my heart drop, the weight of the betrayal nearly crushing me. In the ensuing hours, a storm of confusion and disbelief raged inside me. I replayed every conversation, every quiet evening we'd spent dreaming of a secure future together. I remembered her subtle hints of restlessness, the late-night phone calls when she claimed to be just out with friends, and even the offhand remarks about chasing a life of freedom. None of these had hinted at such a monumental act of betrayal. And yet, there it was. The culmination of years of savings, our safety net for old age, was gone. As the shock began to settle into a cold, hard reality, a small, almost defiant thought flickered in my mind, one that I had been nurturing quietly in the background. I had already cashed out everything, preparing for a future independent of our shared dreams. It was a decision I had made long ago, one I never revealed, one that now saved me from absolute financial ruin. For days, I wandered in a state of detached disbelief. I locked myself in my study, poring over bank statements and legal documents, re-examining every detail of our financial history. The more I looked, the more I realized that the money had been securely transferred into my personal accounts long before she could even think of spending it. I had anticipated that our paths might diverge someday, that the future could bring unforeseen betrayals. It was a harsh, calculated move on my part, a silent insurance policy that I had set in motion without her knowledge. Now, as I confirmed the transactions and the new financial reality, a complex mixture of relief, sadness, and even a trace of vindication began to take shape. I had protected my future, even as she had stolen our shared vision. That evening, as the news of her disappearance spread through our circle of friends and family, I was forced to confront a painful irony. My wife, in her quest for freedom and an exciting new life abroad, had believed that she was securing a lavish, unburdened future for herself. Little did she know that I had already planned for every eventuality. I had cashed out our retirement savings and set aside funds for my own dreams, a secret reserve that now stood as a testament to my foresight and self-reliance. The betrayal stung not because I lost money, I hadn't, but because the foundation of trust in our marriage had been shattered irrevocably. In the days that followed, I retreated into a cocoon of introspection and cautious planning. I began by reaching out to a few trusted friends and financial advisors, confirming every detail of my decision to liquidate our joint funds years ago. I revisited old emails, account statements, and even legal documents that underscored the careful planning behind my move. The more I reviewed them, the more I felt a grim satisfaction. Yes, I had made a calculated choice, a decision that, in retrospect, had been born out of a deep-seated fear of loss and betrayal. I had always harbored a silent uncertainty about our future together, and now that doubt had been validated by her actions. I also spent long nights writing in my journal, documenting every emotion, every ripple of thought that passed through my mind. I wrote about the profound sense of isolation that had followed her departure, the empty rooms in our house, the silent echoes of promises once made, and the stark realization that my future would now be a solitary path. But as I continued to write, a new narrative began to emerge, one of self-empowerment, of reclaiming what was rightfully mine, and of forging a life defined not by shared dreams that had turned to dust, but by the unyielding strength of individuality. With a clear mind and a heavy heart, I resolved to move forward with deliberate, calculated steps. I began by carefully planning my next moves, evaluating my current financial position, mapping out a plan to reinvest in my own future, and even considering new opportunities that had long been on the periphery of my dreams. I visited real estate agencies and explored the market for a modest yet comfortable home that I could call my own, free from the shadows of our shared past. I met with lawyers and financial planners to discuss how to secure my newfound independence. Every meeting, every conversation was a quiet declaration. I was taking control of my destiny. Yet, beneath the surface of all these practical steps, there was a deeper, more emotional journey unfolding. I grappled with conflicting feelings, anger, sorrow, relief, and a poignant sense of loss for the life we had once envisioned together. I questioned whether I had been too cold, too calculating in my decision, and whether a part of me still longed for what we had lost. But as I looked back on the evidence, the carefully executed plan to cash out our savings, the meticulous documentation that proved my foresight, I began to understand that my actions were not born of malice but of survival. I had chosen myself because I had no other choice. In a relationship where trust had been betrayed and shared dreams had been shattered, I had to become my own guardian, my own champion. I began to see that my journey was not just about protecting my finances, but about reclaiming my identity. I immersed myself in self-improvement, enrolling in courses and reading voraciously about personal growth, leadership, and the art of reinvention. I started to practice mindfulness and meditation, learning to quiet the inner critic that had been amplified by years of neglect and betrayal. Slowly, I began to rebuild the self-confidence that had once been eroded by the constant hum of doubt and insecurity. I learned to appreciate my own worth, not as something defined by external circumstances, but as an intrinsic quality that no one could take away. During this period of reconstruction, I also began to reconnect with old passions. I returned to hobbies that had once brought me joy, long walks in nature, painting, and even playing the piano. Each of these activities, once forgotten in the rush of daily responsibilities, became a lifeline, a way to rediscover the parts of me that I had long neglected. They reminded me that I was more than just a partner in a failed marriage. I was a multifaceted individual with talents, dreams, and an inner reservoir of creativity waiting to be unleashed. Socially, I started to rebuild a network of genuine connections. I reached out to friends who had always seen the real me, those who had loved me for my true character rather than a facade of shared responsibility. We met for long, heartfelt conversations over coffee, where we reminisced about old times and discussed our visions for the future. I attended small gatherings, reconnecting with people who were kind, supportive, and honest, a stark contrast to the superficial ties that had once defined my social circle. In those interactions, I began to feel the warmth of genuine acceptance, a sense that I was not alone in my journey of reinvention. As the weeks turned into months, the once overwhelming sting of betrayal began to fade into the background, replaced by a steady, empowering resolve. I started to see that the actions of my wife, though painful, had forced me to confront the reality of my own aspirations. Every setback was a lesson, every tear a stepping stone toward a future defined by my own choices. I began to plan for a future where my independence would be celebrated, a future where I would build a new home, launch new projects, and continue to nurture the dreams that had been suppressed for far too long. Every step of the way, I kept a detailed journal, a written testament to my journey. I documented every challenge, every victory, every moment of self-discovery that marked the slow but steady transformation of my life. The pages of my journal became a tapestry of raw emotions, candid confessions, and ultimately, affirmations of hope. In those words, I found not just a record of the past, but a blueprint for the future, a reminder that even the darkest chapters can lead to the most luminous beginnings. One particularly poignant evening, I sat in a small, dimly lit cafe and struck up a conversation with an older gentleman who had once faced his own share of heartbreak and loss. Over cups of strong coffee, he told me that sometimes, the greatest acts of self-love are the ones that require you to walk away from a situation that no longer serves you. His words resonated deeply with me, reinforcing my decision to embrace my solitude and forge my own path. I left that conversation with a renewed sense of purpose, a conviction that my future would be shaped by my own determination, not by the whims of someone who had abandoned our shared dreams. By the end of these turbulent months, I began to see the faint outline of a new life emerging from the wreckage of the old one. My finances were stabilizing, my career was regaining momentum, and most importantly, I was rediscovering the essence of who I truly was. I had learned to value my independence, to recognize that my self-worth was not tied to the expectations or the actions of another. I understood that every betrayal, every moment of pain, was a crucible that forged the strength and resilience that now pulsed through my veins. With each passing day, the scars of the past began to fade, not because the pain had vanished, but because I had grown into someone who could wear those scars as symbols of triumph. That cold winter morning when everything finally came to light marked the true culmination of my journey, a moment when the dark echoes of betrayal transformed into a blazing beacon of self-reclamation and quiet triumph. I remember standing at the window of my new home, a modest, tastefully renovated sanctuary I had built with painstaking effort, watching as pale sunlight spilled over freshly painted walls. Outside, the world was stirring with possibility, and inside, I felt a serene determination. It was in that reflective silence that I first understood the profound truth. Every heartbreak, every tear shed over lost retirement savings, every bitter moment of betrayal had not been an end at all but the raw, unfiltered beginning of a future defined entirely by me. I had always known that trust was fragile and that dreams built on shared money could sometimes crumble, but I never imagined that my wife, in her desperate bid for freedom, would seize the funds we'd worked so hard to save for our golden years. Yet, as fate would have it, I had prepared for this possibility long ago by secretly cashing out everything, safeguarding my future against any unforeseen treachery. In the aftermath of that shocking revelation, the days that followed were a tumult of emotions and decisions. Initially, I felt an almost overwhelming blend of shock, grief, and a simmering anger that threatened to consume me. The betrayal hit me with a force that left me questioning the very foundations of our life together. I sat alone in the dark of our once shared living room, staring blankly at the bank statements that confirmed the loss. My mind raced. Had I been so naive as to believe in the permanence of our plans? How could she, the person I had trusted implicitly, risk everything for a dream trip abroad? The questions were endless, and the answers only deepened the void within me. But as the days turned into weeks, a shift began to occur, a gradual metamorphosis fueled by the pain that had once threatened to shatter me. I realized that this betrayal, as excruciating as it was, had forced me to confront not just the weakness of a failing relationship, but the immense potential of the person I had always been. Determined not to be defined by her actions, I threw myself into rebuilding every facet of my life. I began with the basics, reclaiming my schedule, my routines, and, most importantly, my sense of self-worth. Every morning, I rose with a renewed sense of purpose. I would take long walks through the neighborhood, each step slowly washing away the remnants of heartbreak. Those early hours, when the world was still and quiet, became a sacred time for reflection. I started journaling again with a raw honesty I had once thought was lost forever. Every entry was a catharsis, a way to sift through the chaos of emotion and piece together the fragments of my identity that had been scattered by betrayal. At the same time, I began to put my long-held plan into action. Years ago, I had grown cautious about relying entirely on our joint finances, and though it pained me to keep such a secret, I had made the difficult decision to cash out my share of our retirement savings. Now, with the truth of her actions laid bare, that secret plan became my lifeline. I meticulously reviewed every transaction, every legal document, and confirmed with my financial advisor that I was, in fact, secure. I had safeguarded my future, ensuring that even if our shared dream was destroyed, I would have a stable foundation to build a new one. The realization filled me with a paradoxical mix of relief and sorrow, a quiet satisfaction that I had been prudent, mingled with the bitter taste of what could have been if trust had prevailed. The next step was to reclaim control over my life entirely. I began by seeking professional counsel, not just for financial planning but for healing my wounded heart. I reached out to a therapist who specialized in relationship trauma and self-reclamation. In our sessions, I learned to process the flood of emotions that followed the betrayal. The initial shock, the simmering anger, and finally, the slow, painstaking journey toward forgiveness, not for her sake but for my own freedom. My therapist helped me see that while her actions had irrevocably altered our relationship, they did not diminish my inherent value. Every session was a reminder that the power to define my future lay within me, that I could transform this painful ending into a potent beginning. Emboldened by therapy and driven by my own determination, I started to take deliberate steps toward a new future. I made a list of goals, both personal and professional, that were entirely my own, free from the shadow of our failed partnership. I envisioned a life where I would no longer be tethered to the memories of a shared past that had turned bitter. I set my sights on advancing my career, exploring new investment opportunities, and even considering a move to a new city where I could start afresh. Every goal was a brick in the foundation of a future defined solely by my choices and my aspirations. I immersed myself in my work with a vigor that surprised everyone around me. I took on challenging projects that pushed me out of my comfort zone and showcased the talents I had honed over the years. Late nights in the office, once filled with dread and resignation, became sessions of relentless creativity and determination. I began to receive recognition for my contributions, small successes that gradually accumulated into significant achievements. Colleagues, once indifferent or even condescending, started to acknowledge my brilliance and resilience. Each accolade, every nod of approval from higher-ups, was a silent victory against the false narrative that had once undermined my worth. At the same time, I reconnected with old friends and formed new, genuine relationships that celebrated my individuality. I attended small gatherings, shared heartfelt conversations over coffee, and discovered that true companionship is found in those who appreciate you for who you are, not for what you once represented in a broken relationship. These connections were a source of constant encouragement. They reinforced the understanding that I was not alone in my journey and that many had faced similar betrayals, only to rise stronger on the other side. I found solace in their stories, and in our shared experiences, I discovered that the human spirit is remarkably resilient when nurtured by love, honesty, and unwavering self-belief. During this transformative period, I also began exploring creative outlets that allowed me to express the full spectrum of my emotions. I returned to painting, a hobby that had once brought me quiet joy, and discovered that splashing bold colors onto a canvas was a powerful way to externalize the inner tumult. Every brushstroke became an act of liberation, each hue a declaration of the vibrant future I was determined to create. I also rekindled my passion for writing, chronicling my journey in a blog that gradually gained a modest following. In those digital pages, I laid bare my struggles and triumphs with raw honesty, and the feedback from readers, messages of encouragement and shared empathy, touched me deeply. I realized that by sharing my story, I could help others find the courage to confront their own pain and reclaim their identities. As the months slipped by, I began to see a pattern emerging, a tapestry woven from the threads of hardship and hope. I meticulously tracked my progress in a new journal, documenting every breakthrough and every setback with an unflinching clarity. I set monthly milestones and celebrated each achievement, no matter how small. When my investment portfolio grew, when I received an unexpected promotion at work, or when a new friendship blossomed, I recorded it as a testament to my resilience. Each entry in that journal was a building block in the reconstruction of my life, a personal roadmap that reminded me that the future was mine to create, one deliberate choice at a time. Financial independence, once a distant dream obscured by the weight of shared savings, began to take shape in concrete, measurable ways. With the funds I had carefully secured years ago, I started to invest in new ventures, small business opportunities that promised growth and stability. I diversified my portfolio, learning new strategies and employing financial advisors whose expertise reaffirmed my decision to take control of my own destiny. Every additional dollar saved, every smart investment made, was a silent, resolute declaration that I was reclaiming what was rightfully mine. The financial security I now enjoyed was not merely a safety net. It was the springboard for a future filled with promise and independence. And through it all, the memory of that fateful night, of my wife's callous betrayal and the cold shock of discovering our retirement savings had been squandered, transformed into a wellspring of strength. It was no longer the source of my pain but the catalyst for my evolution. I began to view that betrayal as a necessary, if painful, turning point, a moment that forced me to shed a life defined by dependency and step boldly into a world where my dreams, however daunting, were mine to pursue. The journey was long, fraught with moments of loneliness, anger, and self-doubt, but it was also rich with learning and growth. Every hardship I endured was counterbalanced by a newfound sense of self, a clarity that I had never experienced before. One evening, I attended a local conference on entrepreneurship, a gathering of driven, resilient individuals who shared stories of overcoming adversity. As I took the stage to share my own journey, I recounted the roller coaster of emotions, the relentless pursuit of personal growth, and the small, hard-won victories that had defined my path. I spoke of the shock and pain of betrayal, but also of the quiet determination that had fueled my transformation. The audience listened with rapt attention, and when I finished, the applause was not just an acknowledgement of my business success. It was a celebration of the human spirit's incredible ability to rise above even the deepest wounds. In that moment, I realized that my story had become more than just my own. It was a beacon of hope for anyone who had ever felt diminished by the actions of others. As I stepped off the stage, I felt an overwhelming sense of closure. The journey from betrayal to empowerment had been long and arduous, but it had also been deeply transformative. I had rebuilt my financial security, reclaimed my identity, and discovered a depth of resilience that I never knew existed. My new home, my growing investments, and the vibrant network of supportive friends were all testaments to the fact that I had chosen myself, and in doing so, had created a future filled with endless possibilities. Now, as I stand on the threshold of a promising tomorrow, I look back with gratitude for every painful lesson that brought me here. I have learned that true strength comes not from avoiding heartbreak, but from harnessing its power to fuel personal growth. Every scar, every moment of sorrow, has been transformed into a symbol of my journey, a journey that turned betrayal into the blueprint for a life reimagined. I have come to understand that my destiny is mine alone to shape, that my worth is intrinsic, and that even the darkest chapters can give rise to the most luminous beginnings. In this final phase of my transformation, I set new goals that reflect the man I have become. A man who stands tall, unburdened by the past, and ready to embrace the future with passion and determination. I have invested in ventures that excite me, cultivated relationships that nurture my soul, and embraced a lifestyle that celebrates independence and self-respect. I am no longer defined by the actions of a partner who chose to flee in search of a hollow dream. Instead, I define myself by the choices I make every day, the risks I take, and the relentless pursuit of a life that is authentically mine. And so, as I close this chapter and look forward to the unwritten pages of my future, I carry with me the unshakable truth that every ending is but the beginning of something extraordinary. The pain of betrayal has given way to the power of self-reclamation, and the loss of our shared savings has become a stepping stone to financial freedom and personal growth. My journey from heartbreak to empowerment is a testament to the indomitable strength of the human spirit, a spirit that, when tested by the harshest of circumstances, can emerge more brilliant and unyielding than ever before. This is my story, a saga of resilience, self-discovery, and triumph over betrayal. I have transformed the darkest moments of my past into the bedrock of a future filled with hope, creativity, and the unrelenting pursuit of my dreams. As I step boldly into tomorrow, I do so with a heart full of gratitude, a mind enriched by every challenge overcome, and a spirit emboldened by the unwavering belief that my destiny is mine to create, one determined step at a time.